that I've attempted. Couldn't even put a dent in. I can't love you anymore. I do now.
She never wanted to be wild picket fenced in. Her heart's like a feather in a Tulsa wind. Seaside breeze will bring her to life, and all them other boys say she's a goodbye girl. She'll wreck your world and leave before the morning sun. But here she is free, lying next to me, 'cause I ain't trying to tame her love. I keep the windows down and the wind in her hair, keep her heart hanging on round every turn. She ain't scared to get tied down, scared to get burned, just looking for somebody as wild as her. Saw that highway wide in her deep brown eyes. She saw a long stretch of dirt road dreaming in mind. She ain't living for a diamond ring, just living like the rock and roll song she sings out loud. Burning it down, blazing up a trail of smoke. Wherever we are, wherever we go, yeah, that's where she calls home. I keep the windows down and the wind in her hair, keep her heart hanging on round every turn. She ain't scared to get tied down, scared to get burned, just looking for somebody as wild as her. I ain't trying to fix her, I just wanna kiss her, feel a little fire in her soul. Won't be us here forever, but when we're together, swear no we ain't ever let me go. She knows. I keep the windows down and the wind in her hair, keep her heart hanging on round every turn. She ain't scared to get tied down, scared to get burned, just looking for somebody as wild as her.
It don't take too much to get the wheels turning round and round in my head. Top shelf and Cuervo, I know it's gonna stir up every memory she left. Still burns, I can't lie, when I think about the good before goodbye. Guess that's what I'm drinking on tonight. It'll make you think that you got a shot at the one that got away. When it goes down, she's gonna tell you, she's gonna come back, and that's what makes you stay for another round. Keep you sticking around, keep pouring out until she's all you're thinking about. It'll keep you hung up, keep you drunk on what it was. Man, that's what tequila does. It sneaks up on you, going out for one, turns into 2 a.m. You know what's...
That's right. All right, good evening. So, everybody can make your way to your seat and get ready for the main event. My name is Nick Bishop, serve as Vice President for Economic Development and Regional Centers here at Volunteer State Community College. On behalf of President Montague, all the faculty, all the staff at Volunteer State, I want to welcome you to our Gallatin campus here on the lovely in Gallatin at Volunteer State Community College. Tonight's debate, we welcome you to the Gallatin City Candidate Forum. Tonight's Candidate Forum is sponsored by the Gallatin Area Chamber of Commerce, as well as Main Street Media. Before we get started, I'm going to give you a couple of housekeeping items and some ground rules, and then we'll turn it over to our moderator. Couple of rules, really important. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes to provide their introduction when prompted. Then questions will begin, and candidates will have 1 minute response time and then 30 seconds rebuttal. It's important to note that you will only get one rebuttal per each question, and I'll have to stop you if you do more than two because we need to get out of here by 8 o'clock. There will be blank paper and pens provided for each of you at the table here to my right. You are not allowed to bring anything with you up here to the table. You can't bring notes. You can't bring anything to write with. We've provided that for you. Do not bring your phone or any other electronic device. If I see your phone's out, if you have an emergency, please just kind of let Dave or I know, and you can go backstage and take your phone call for an emergency. If I see you using your phone for the debate, I'll confiscate your phone, and you have to make a $1,000 donation to the Vol State Foundation for the scholarship fund. Way this will work is we'll call you by your district. When you get up here, you can introduce your name. So I'm not going to call out names, but you'll have that opportunity when you get up here. When you hear your district called for your race, enter on the steps to my left. When you're done with your section, go down, exit to the ramp on my right. That way the next group can come right in behind you without any issue. Another note, one of the candidates from District 4 is stuck in traffic, but he may try to join us and jump in when we get here. And then the last note, I just have to say this since I have the microphone. I've had the opportunity to work in communities all across the state of Tennessee, and I can sincerely tell you that Gallatin is a very special place and a very special community. And I think one of the reasons that's the case is because of its people. So I'm just going to leave you with this. Don't let an election ruin that great community spirit that you have. When this debate's over, when this election's over, make sure you keep that community spirit. Make sure you keep Gallatin moving in the direction that it is. Don't let an election ruin that. Because if you live or work in Gallatin, you're very fortunate. I can promise you that. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the night with Main Street Media, Mr. Dave Gold. And with that being said, candidates for District 3, welcome to the stage.
You're it. You want to go ahead and give an introduction, Rick?
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Rick Murphy. I'm running for Gallatin City Council, District 3. A little bit about my background. I was an Eagle Scout here at Troop 425 in Gallatin at the First Presbyterian Church. I'm a Gallatin High School graduate. I received my degree from Tennessee Technological University in Cookeville, as well as I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army as a military intelligence officer, detailed to the infantry for a little over a year. Early in my career, I was designated I had the joint duty designation, which tagged my records to work with all the different services across the whole spectrum. I was a major on an admiral staff in Hawaii, which was very interesting. And I was on the Crisis Action Team as the intel rep for the Southeast Asia South Pacific branch. I attended Command and General Staff College, retired as a lieutenant colonel from the Army, and then returned to Gallatin. Excuse me. My wife, Linda, my daughter, Caitlin, is a sophomore at Western Kentucky. I became a financial advisor for Edward Jones, where I managed approximately $140 million for a whole range of different clients and businesses here in the area. I also was very actively involved in training Jones advisors here in Middle Tennessee and probably traveled 20 times to St. Louis or more to train advisors at our headquarters. In addition to my work at Jones, I was also very involved in the community. I was the president of the quarterback club, the booster club for the high school, probably 3 different times. I was the president of the Gallatin Morning Rotary. I'm a member of the Gallatin Noon Rotary. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce twice, and I'm still a chamber member, and I was on several other boards and organizations throughout the city. I think my involvement in those organizations and my military experience prepare me to be a city councilman in District 3. I've always been recognized as a team player, team builder, and a complex problem solver. I will appreciate your vote in this upcoming election, and I will ask that we just try to tamp the whole thing down and get a little more civility back into our process. And remember, the last election was decided by 1 vote, so make sure you get out and vote in November. That's all I've got, sir.
All right, Rick. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your willingness to serve.
No problem.
Just one thing I want to say about the questions before we get started. The only people who have seen the questions are members of the Gallatin News staff. Nobody, we haven't shared these questions with anybody, certainly not the candidates, of course, but nobody else. So I just want to make sure that's clear that people will be hearing these for the first time tonight. So, and we did also invite Rick's opponent here, and Rick's opponent's not here, but we're still going to ask you some questions and
Thank you.
put you on the spot a little bit. So
No problem.
we ran a questionnaire recently in the Gallatin News, and you raised concerns about high-density developments. And you said, quote, all rezoning and requests for any high-density developments must be carefully reviewed for the obvious impact on our already stretched infrastructure. So if you would walk us through specifically, how will you evaluate these types of projects, and give us an example of a type of project that you would not support?
Right. Well, as some people know, and what I've discovered, there's 6 different categories of density. You go all the way from rural, which you have 1 household for every 5 to 10 acres, all the way up to high density, where you may have 65 to 100 units in a single acre. So there are in an acre. So that's the issue. So the concerns of my constituents is that of the apartments, the high density. And I think those need to be very carefully scrutinized. Now, people have property rights, and those have to be respected. But I think that we need to do a very good job of trying to scrutinize every one of these developments that come through, because they all go through the Planning Commission. That's where the whole process starts. They do the heavy lifting on all these projects. But that's where this thing starts, to try to take a look at that. I don't think that those can be slowed down. You can't not allow somebody to come in and propose a development in a particular area. But any attempt to rezone from R20 to R15, which basically means we're going to go from a 20,000 square foot lot to a 15,000 square foot lot, all those attempts are to try to increase the density to the bottom line, make more money. So those are the ones that have to be looked at very carefully, because we're not going to stop the growth. There's the population of Sumner County is expected to double in the next 20 years to over 280, 290,000 people. There's just considerable issues that we have to deal with, because they're coming. They're coming.
Are you open to approving rezoning for apartments, or does it depend on the project, or are you open to that, or are you saying no way?
Depends on the project.
Okay.
Again, Etzel Charles gave a presentation about 3 weeks ago, and he gave a very detailed, as an analyst, I was amazed at all his analytical data. He said that there's 400 new subdivisions in Middle Tennessee that hadn't even started yet. And he said, the question is not whether this is right or wrong, but what are the needs of the people? What do the people need?
Okay, great. Let me get your reaction to a couple of things in the same questionnaire in the newspaper that your opponent said. One thing he said is, quote, the council's rezoning of land and commercial parcels to high-density residential adds to a burden on our public services. The lack of commercial parcels kills opportunities for new businesses to come to our town. So do you agree with him that we have a lack of commercial parcels is keeping businesses from coming here? And if you do agree, how would you fix that?
Well, I think that you take a look at the commercial and businesses developments. Their taxes are higher than that of the residential. And in Gallatin, we're generating more tax revenue from businesses than we are from property owners. So I think that's important. So there certainly should be nothing to try to change the zoning from a business to residential. That's something that should not occur.
And then one other thing your opponent said, he said high density housing costs more than the tax revenue it raises. This will cause existing property owners to pay more in taxes for new schools, public safety services, clogged traffic disruptions, and new roads. Are you concerned as well that continued growth will result in the need to raise taxes in the city? And would you support a property tax increase, or are there other ways you would propose to generate new revenue to handle all this infrastructure?
There's not been a tax increase in Gallatin over the last 10 years. So I would not be in favor of that. Right now, the City of Gallatin, their rainy day fund is around $9 million. There's ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan. There's $20 million uncommitted funds. So I think there's some things we can do, but again, bringing in new businesses as opposed to more dense populated areas generates more income, because as a property owner, a homeowner, they pay 25% of their 80 cents per $100 for the first 25% of their property value. Businesses pay 40% for that same 80 cents on the 100.
Okay. Let's move on to something else, beyond growth, even though that's the most popular topic, I think, in the city right now. Part of what makes a city great is the amenities it offers its citizens. From our parks and outdoors to places to shop and eat to cultural activities, do you think Gallatin has the kinds of amenities to make this a great place to live? And what other amenities would you like to see in Gallatin?
I think it does. I mean, you go back to October 2017 when I've met a lot of new folks that tell them about, if you want to hear about Gallatin, read the October 2017 article on the Reader's Digest article, Nicest City in America. And that was a great article that really highlights what Gallatin's all about. Our Parks and Recreation Department's excellent. There's 800 acres of park land here, and we have access to 200 acres of core property. Our Miracle Park, what David Brown has done there, the Long Hollow Golf Course. I've had friends of mine that have come in with their kids playing soccer, and when they go out to Triple Creek Park, and they said, we've never seen anything like this. How many soccer fields do you guys have here? And it's interesting to note that on a busy weekend, there may be 30 to 80 or 90 tournaments come in to our parks. That's 5,000 people on a weekend. Look at how that puts people in the hotel rooms and puts people in the restaurants. So, I think anything we can do to highlight what we do out here at Old Hickory Lake. There's a lot of bass tournaments. Barry Young works with that. I remember when I was involved with the chamber, when the eclipse came, we had people from Japan coming over here. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm getting the hook over there. So I'll stop.
Okay. All right, I got one more question for you, and that has to do with the approach you would take if you are elected. And as we sit here today talking about important issues like growth and taxes and infrastructure and amenities, but there will be other things that come up in the next 4 years that we have no idea are on the horizon. I mean, who could have predicted COVID would have the impact it did, just a few years ago? So with that in mind, talk about your life and work experiences and how those would help you approach unexpected situations.
Well, having been in the military and some of the jobs I've had there, I remember one night I got a call, or one afternoon I got a call when the United States invaded Panama, and I was called and they said, you're going to brief the Admiral at 3 o'clock in the morning on the Panama invasion. And there's 3 people on the island that know about that, so be ready in the morning at 4 o'clock. So that was pretty good. And then we had to evacuate Burma to get all the Americans out of there. So, I've got a lot of life experiences, and I think just being a part of Gallatin and being involved in Gallatin and knowing some of the people, I make no apologies for being from Gallatin. I make no apologies for going to Gallatin High School. This is a great place to live. But I learned early on that when I was a company commander, I had a brigade commander, my people, as an intel officer, I was inspecting their organizations. And I told him, I said, sir, we're going to be inspecting your battalion commanders. And if my people find some security discrepancies, they're going to be written up. I will inform you of what has transpired, but I'm going to let you know I've got to write those people up. And he stopped me. He said, Murphy, let me tell you something. A man on duty knows no one. And that's my approach coming into this city council job. Yeah, I know a lot of people in Gallatin. I make no excuse for that, but you got to call the balls and strikes as you see it. And my job is to represent the constituents of District 3. And some of those decisions might not be favorable with folks within the city, but again, my job is to represent the constituents as best I can while balancing the needs of Gallatin. I mean, that's the challenge every one of us face in this audience with this growth that's coming into this city. It's coming.
Okay, great. Rick, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can y'all hear me? Before we welcome our next district up, I forgot an announcement, and Kim will get mad at me if I don't say this. So want to give a shout out and recognize those of you that may be watching via Facebook, and also want to give a shout out to our Vol State AV team, the fine gentleman back here in the back with Miss Kim. They're making this possible tonight. They're also making the live stream possible. So if you're watching from home, it's because of these gentlemen back here in the back. So with that being said, let's welcome our 4th district candidates.
Ruth, welcome. Do you want to
Hi,
introduce yourself to the?
I would.
Okay.
My name is Ruth Fennel, and I have lived in Gallatin for 15 years. Prior to that, I was in Florida for 20, and various other places growing up. My background is organizational training, facilitation, development, HR, come from a variety of industries. So everything from real estate, insurance, manufacturing, distribution. Married to a golf professional who works at the Gaylord Springs golf course. We have 2 pound puppies, a black something and a yellow something. And just love being in Gallatin. Came here because of family who has been here for 30 years. And looking forward to being able to serve Gallatin.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we, Craig Hayes, who's also running, had RSVP'd he would be here, but I think he's stuck in traffic. And so I'm not sure he's going to be here before we finish question, but we're going to go ahead and ask you some questions anyway. So,
Go right ahead.
and thanks for being here, and thanks for your willingness to serve as well.
You bet.
So we're going to talk about growth again. I'm going to go back to the questionnaire that we had in the newspaper, and I'm going to read a quote, and I want to ask you a question about it. You said, if Gallatin expands to its current proposed urban growth boundaries, will be 85 square miles wide with a potential ultimate population of 130,000, which is about 3 times our size today. I do not believe current roads and infrastructure are prepared to handle that, but I also believe if we plan correctly, our infrastructure can grow along with the managed growth of Gallatin. So my question is this: if we're not currently prepared for the growth, what specific actions would you propose or take as a member of city government to make sure we're prepared? And just as importantly, upgrading our infrastructure will not be free. So how will you pay for it?
Well, part of the challenge with the infrastructure is the fact that we are allowing development so quickly. And when the developers come into a new piece of property, a lot of times it seems like it's 2-lane roads. And those roads are now going to have to handle several hundred more cars every day, in which case, who's going to account for the repairs to the damage to the roads? What happens is the developers come in, put in the new infrastructure, the new roads to their development, but that's only going to last on average about 15 years. With our current roads, we have about 220 miles of roads in Gallatin, and we can repair about 7.5 per year. If you do that math, it equals to 29 years. So every 29 years, we could repave the roads in Gallatin. If they only last 15, that math doesn't work. So we've got to start preparing for ways of properly funding that type of infrastructure.
So how do you propose doing that? So that's going to cost a lot of money.
It is going to cost a lot of money. So one of the things that we need to explore is this 2006 county, I've gone dead, county act that is allowing us or not allowing us to do impact fees. Williamson County has done a workaround with that. It's calling them educational fees. So with the new growth, the new development, the developers are fronting money to help pay for those kinds of expenses. Of course, it does get passed on to the consumer at some point, but over a course of the 30, 40 years, it's more manageable. So I think we need to fully explore fees for that development up front that will help to pay for those costs in the long
Okay,
term.
so impact fees or
Yes.
increasing impact fees would be,
Yes. Yeah, and they may not want us to call it impact fees, but there's certain fees that need to be presented.
and does that take an act of the legislature to approve that sort of thing?
It would, yes. We would have to work with our state legislators in order to do that. I know, again, Williamson County has done that, and we need to kind of follow that lead.
Gotcha, okay. Well, let me move on to a different topic, and that is term limits for council members. Do you support term limits? And if so, how many terms do you think a council member should serve?
I absolutely support term limits. My current opponent has been there for 24 years, and he has served Gallatin in the city council, which I commend him for that. But he is also, his 24 years equals 42% of his life. And I think that at that point, it is time to expand and let others come in with fresh eyes, a fresh perspective. It is not anything to diminish what he has done. He's a very nice person, but I would fully support term limits. I think that 2 terms max is really enough. You need to get in there, do what you want to be able to accomplish at the same time you're bringing up others and allowing coaching and mentoring of other people to be able to kind of have a succession plan. And that again comes from the corporate world. In the corporate world, you have to have a succession plan. You can't just walk off on a position.
Do you worry that in a fast-changing city like Gallatin, that losing some of that institutional knowledge could be a challenge if you do that, if you have people only serve 2 terms?
Well, if you're doing it correctly, you have a leapfrog effect because we have half that are up for election every 2 years. So you have 2 years worth of institutional knowledge, but if you have 2 term limits, which is what the Gallatin voters sought in 2018 by 80%, they wanted term limits. And so we now have people who have been there for multiple decades who are continuing to want to hold on to their positions. I fully believe in institutional knowledge, but we need to work to say this half comes here, they're going to carry over for the next 2 and go from there.
Okay. All right. Much has been made of high-profile companies like Facebook and Beretta bringing jobs to Gallatin. But the reality is there are thousands and thousands of jobs in the city created by local entrepreneurs and small businesses who don't always make the headlines. Do you think the city is doing enough to support small businesses and entrepreneurs who are here? And if not, what more can be done?
I think that first and foremost, I love small business owners. I think they are the heart and soul of America, and I think they are the heart and soul of Gallatin. I think that they want to, they in essence risk everything that they have to make their dream happen. And they work and pay their employees before they pay themselves very frequently. So I think that between the chamber, the Rotary, there's multiple organizations and the city government that support small business. The challenge with Meta is the fact that they are really only going to employ 100 people. So in essence, that's kind of a small business at this site. And I think we need to make sure that we're providing as much opportunity and support as we possibly can.
Any thoughts as to what that might be, that opportunity and support? Or are there grants? Are there ways to incubate entrepreneurs? I mean, anything like that comes to mind that you might?
We have education, obviously Vol State mentor classes, different things like that. There's also various workshops that could be done. I'm not a proponent of government stepping in to business any more than needed, but I do want to support the small businesses.
And let me ask you one last question, the same question that I asked Rick earlier. Is the approach you take, and again, as we sit here talking about these issues that everyone's talking about today, things can change very quickly,
Absolutely.
as we found out. So talk about your life experiences, what you've done, your work experiences, and what approach you would take and bring if we have unexpected things that come up here in the city over the next 4 years.
Well, in the corporate world, you have to deal with the unexpected all the time, whether it's a natural disaster or supply chain issues or things like that. So I think you have to be prepared for that. You also have to plan ahead. And so you have contingency plans. In the corporate world, again, you're thinking in terms of if this, then that. And so you want to make sure that you're you're anticipating as much as possible. Can't anticipate everything, but you need to make sure that you're allowing for as much flexibility as you can. When I was at Capital One, we created a new position, and I saved about $500,000 in 1 year. And the following year, we saved another $1 million. And part of that is because of creative thinking, problem solving, and the ability to look for solutions.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. Thank you, Ruth.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
So I lied to you. One more announcement. The chamber wanted me to remind the candidates to stick around, and when this is over with, gather back up on the stage for a group photo. So appreciate if you guys stick around. Next up will be District 5, I believe. So welcome to the stage, District 5.
Thank you both for being here. Mr. Carter, you want to start? Introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Carter. I am a 2009 graduate of Gallatin High School and a 2013 graduate of Lane College. I do want everyone to know that I am not a politician. I have no plans on being a lifelong politician. However, I am a concerned citizen, and as part of my duties as a concerned citizen, I'm now running for the election and for the seat in District 5. Like I said, I graduated from Lane College, so I've always been in student government and student council in high school. I was an active leader. In fact, I was the lead student ambassador when my college, Lane College, went through the reaffirmation and accreditation process.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
Yes, my name is John D. Alexander Sr. Married to Miss Nancy Holman Alexander. I have one son, John Jr. I'm a retired pastor from the United Methodist Church for over 20 years. I retired from Donnelly Printing Company after 27 years. I've been on the city council for 24 plus years. I'm also the chairperson of the Power Board here in Gallatin. I would love to remain on the council, and I do love term limits, but experience means a lot. You can't get on the city council in 1 year, 2 years, and turn the world over. It doesn't work that way. It takes time. It takes coordination. It takes effort among your colleagues. So I'm looking forward, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Thank you. And I should note there's a third candidate in this race, and he was invited as well, and he wasn't able to make it tonight. So, but thank you both for being here and for your willingness to serve. Mr. Alexander, let me start with you. We've been talking a lot about growth so far, and that seems to be a hot topic with citizens. And you've served on the council for years. You've had a front row seat to this, watching this explosion of Gallatin from, kind of a quiet place to a really fast growing city. So do you think we've managed growth effectively here? And if not, what are some things we can do to do it more effectively?
I think we've done pretty well with it. I wish you could stop growth, but you can't stop people from coming to your city, because City of Gallatin is very attractive for its taxes. It's attractive for its employment. And I wish there was a way we could control people from coming in. But Gallatin is a good place, a beautiful place. And natural people are going to want to come to Gallatin to live. So I just like to see that growth spread out more towards my district than just a small area.
Do you want to respond to what you said, or?
So yes, I do agree that Gallatin is a great place to live. I'm privileged to be a lifelong Gallatin resident. However, with growth, I think that it needs to be smart, and our goals need to be smart. So they need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I think with setting smart goals for the growth for Gallatin, then we can spread it out, and it's something that the city and each district can manage.
Okay, thank you. To that end, let me start with you this time. Do you think, is there a scenario where you think we need to raise property taxes in order to manage the growth?
there's not a scenario that I think we need to raise property taxes. We need to keep things affordable for the people that live here and help also prepare people that have lived in their homes for decades for things such as gentrification, and help educate people on what to do and how that process works so that we don't have people losing out on their homes that they've spent their lives paying for.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Alexander?
I don't believe in tax increases, but I wish there was some kind of way, which I don't have that formula at this time, but I wish there was some kind of way that we can transfer some of this growth pain, if you will, towards the new people that's coming in, because you got people that's been living here all their life. We shouldn't bear the burden of the new people that's coming in. So no, I don't agree with tax increases.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. You both have talked about wanting to build things in your district. Mr. Alexander, you've talked about a community center has been your dream for 20 years. And I think in our questionnaire, Mr. Carter, you mentioned finishing Clearview Park and getting that up to snuff and doing the fixes there and the improvements there. Where would you prioritize these projects? And what are some other things you think we need to have in the city to make this a great place to live? And Mr. Carter, we'll start with you this time.
Yes, sir. So I think Clearview Park is a big priority for District 5. However, I think there are other priorities in the city as well. And so that is something that we need to discuss with the council to set a good solid plan instead of just saying it's coming. Other things that we need in the city, I think that is just up for survey, and that as council members, we need to be in our district more asking our district what we need and what the people in our district want.
Well, let me just follow up real quick. So what might an example be? What have you heard as you've been out talking to people in addition to the two things that were mentioned?
So when I've knocked on doors, I know we need a better plan for the traffic at Union Elementary in District 5. I've heard constituents complain about the traffic and their driveways being blocked when the school is doing different events. I love that the school is doing different events, and I love that those parents, families, and grandparents are always there. But the city still needs a better plan so that the people that live there aren't inconvenienced because the school is doing events. I've heard people say, we need better amenities at Clearview Park, and we've mentioned that. And then we may need to look at upgrading the infrastructure and adding more sidewalks in our community in District 5.
Gotcha. Mr. Alexander, how would you prioritize these different projects? What are the most important ones to get done?
Clearview Park is my heart, my dream that I have dreamt a long time. Back in the day when Clearview Park, we had a wooden building, but we had family, we had a swimming pool, we had all of that. We don't have any of that no more. All we have is a building. And yes, Miracle Park and all the park are growing, that's good. But my district, 5th District, need that building, and we've been needing it for a long time. We do have $2 million set aside for that structure, and I just can't rest because I think about it every day, every night. And I was one of the class members to graduate from Union High School, for those of you who remember, back in 19. And I really would love to see Clearview Park. I mean, we need it. We got so many people in that area, and some people expect for our kids to walk to the Civic Center. Civic Center is a nice place, but our kids not going to walk to the Civic Center. I'm not going to walk to the Civic Center. We need something in our own district, like Clearview Park. That's what we need. And I'm looking forward to Blythe Street, along with Dr. Jordan Avenue, all that one street. That street is going to be widened into 3-lane street, sidewalks on both sides. We need sidewalks so bad in our district. And so that's what we're working on now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Alexander, I'll start with you on this question. Part of District 5 is in an opportunity zone. And opportunity zones were added to the U.S. tax code 5 years ago, and there are areas where new investments may be eligible for preferential tax treatment for businesses. Has the city done a good job promoting the opportunity zones to businesses, and what more can be done to help spur business growth in that area?
We've done some, but in my opinion, not enough. But I'm so excited about Blessed Estates being built on Blythe Avenue. I'm excited about some of the business that about to open up again. There's a possibility that John Malone's store, I think his son is going to open that building. We need that area developed. Gallatin is growing. Gallatin is developing, but not so much in my district, in the 5th District. And I just want to rest until things are brought up to par in the 5th District, and we need that extremely bad, extremely bad.
Mr. Carter, what can be done to help spur that investment and get that growth going, do you think?
So I think the city can encourage growth in the 5th District and try to push business owners in that district. I think that the city also needs to have people out in the 5th District seeing the areas that are up that can be where new businesses can start at, and seeing what the city can do to revitalize the district.
All right, I'm going to ask you all the same question that I asked the other candidates so far, which is we're sitting here talking about current issues, but there's a lot of things that could happen that we're not expecting right now. So, Mr. Carter, talk about your background, what you've done, work and personal background, and when unexpected things come up, what approach would you take to something like that?
So I'm currently a social worker with the Salvation Army on a day-to-day basis. I work with unhoused individuals in Davidson County, specifically downtown Nashville, helping them get document ready to become permanently housed. So I am very used to having to roll with the punches. When the snowstorms happen, nobody in my building could come to work. It was mandated that our team came to work, and my car was stuck at my mom's house in the snow, my truck that doesn't have 4-wheel drive. So I called my boss. I'm like, hey, can you send me an Uber? My boss sent me an Uber. I got ready, went to work. There were days I worked 24-hour shifts. There were days when we had to get to work and I was in the kitchen cooking meals for 200 or 300 people. So it's all about rolling with the punches. I'm also the oldest of my sibling group, the Fantastic Five. So our single mother raised us, and there were times when my mother had to work late, so I had to adapt to not being able to go out and hang with friends. Sometimes I might have to cook dinner for the siblings or help get them to practice. So you just take the punches and roll with it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Alexander.
We are in desperate need of low-income homes, not just saying low-income home, but really low-income homes. I've had people over in the 5th District to live in cars, to live in boxes. I have had families to live in my apartment out back. I've got a family living there now because they burn out, and it's all different kind of people. But when we say low-income home, they build them that way, but when the price come up, it's too high for people to afford. And I know a lot of people don't like apartments, but that's about the only thing some people can afford, because the young generation that speaks to me now, they don't want a 5-acre lot that they had to cut and maintain. They want something nice that they can get in, just clean, and keep moving.
So what's it going to take to make that happen, do you think?
A lot of prayers, because when they build these homes, then we got to qualify. And I also would like to see, we used to have it years ago where we had grants that would come in and help low-income families revamp their homes and make it more livable. So we need more funding for low-income homes to be revamped. We need better qualification for people to qualify for these low-income houses.
Mr. Carter, do you want to comment on the low-income housing discussion and what would it take to help with that?
I don't have the plan, but like I said, I work for the Salvation Army, and that is something we see every day. We have hundreds of people that need to be housed and nowhere to house these individuals. So like I said, I don't have the plan, but I do hope to serve on the council, work alongside the council and our mayor to come up with the solutions so that everybody does have housing.
Okay, great. Thank you both very much. Appreciate your time. Thanks for being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Don't have any announcements this time around. So up next, let's welcome our at-large candidates to the stage.
welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here. Mr. Fann, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Let me start.
Sure.
I'm Steve Fann. I've moved here in 1973. I've been self-employed since 1976. I've been in manufacturing, retail, hospitality, and rentals. I have a diversified background. I have to make business decisions every day, have made them for 40 plus years, and I feel like it makes me qualified to be councilman.
Okay. My name is John Ruth. I've been here about 30 years, and actually the first thing I want to say is I appreciate a staircase that's got handrails on both sides. I can tell you that for sure. Anyway, I've been here, as I said, about 30 years. Worked for ServPro corporate headquarters for 6 of those years, and then I've had my own cleaning business since 2002. I love Gallatin. I love Tennessee. I forgot to mention, my wife's sitting over there, 42 years, Terry. We've raised 4 children in Gallatin. They're all grown now. One of them actually works here in town. I've been to just about every state park in Tennessee. I've been to just about every county in Tennessee, just traveling around interested. And I think it takes 2 things to be a good elected official at any level. It takes honesty and it takes courage. I wouldn't give you 2 cents for an honest politician unless they had the same amount of courage to stand alone. And I see people in the room that probably remember when I was on the council before in the late 90s, and I wasn't afraid to stand alone. I wasn't afraid to talk about all the options, all the options. There's no issue that's not so scary that we can't at least put it on the table and say, all right, let's sort this out. This could be the solution. I mean, I hadn't been mentioned tonight. It might come up a little bit later in our remarks, but moratorium. I've had people tell me we need a moratorium, but it can come up later and we can talk about that more. But I'm not afraid to tackle the issues, not at all.
Well, Mr. Ruth, you took my first question. It was for you.
Okay.
You've raised the issue of a moratorium. So what exactly?
I'm having a little trouble.
You've raised the issue of a moratorium.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So what exactly would that entail? And is that even legal to do a moratorium?
Well, let me say that I got the idea from a citizen, honestly, when I was doing some door knocking. I mean, this is somebody who grew up here and said, we need to just stop this growth and let our infrastructure. See, it's not the growth that's the problem. The growth is great. It's given us a lot of nice restaurants and a lot of different things. But if it's taxing our infrastructure, which it is, and here's a perfect example, and not to, I mean, how come Craig couldn't get here? The traffic has held him up. Now, that may be coming out of Nashville. There may be something extenuating here, but he just lives like 5 minutes from here. If he was coming from home and couldn't get here, come on, seriously, there's an example right there. And that's what the people are telling me is it's not so much the growth. We're happy to have the new people. It's just that what used to take me 20 minutes to do around town takes me an hour and a half now. That's how it affects us all. There's no such thing as traffic problems. It's insufficient roads. And that's where the attention needs to be given.
Mr. Hayes is actually coming from Louisville. So,
Okay. Well, that's the whole
fortunately, it's
story.
not a 5-minute. That would have been quite a story if it was coming
Well,
from.
that's interesting because every bit of I-65 between here and Louisville is 3 lanes wide
Is it?
on both sides. So they got some work to do too, it sounds like.
Mr. Fann, so the question was, Mr. Ruth raised the issue of a moratorium. Do you think, is that something you would consider, or do you think that would be a good idea, or would that not be such a good idea?
I don't see it being a good idea at all because one, it would be legal ramifications. I think down the road for the city, it would get very expensive. And one, somebody's going to have to enforce them. I don't think there's maybe some moratoriums that would be good, but as far as when it comes to growth, I don't think you're going to be able to control it. And I think you'd be wasting your time.
Okay. All right, let's go on to the next question. And Mr. Fann, this is for you. The questionnaire that you completed for the Gallatin News, you said you'd like to see the focus of economic development be one that brings business and industry that provides solid job and career opportunities for our residents, and the maintaining current commercial zoning will be crucial in this process. Let me ask a question I asked earlier this evening. Thousands and thousands of jobs in the city are created by local businesses who aren't necessarily in the headlines. Do you think the city's doing enough to support these small businesses and entrepreneurs who are already here? And if not, what more can be done?
Well, you you make the opportunity for them by growth. If you don't have growth, the small business is not going to grow. Unfortunately, you've got to have more people to come in to make those opportunities. If you're going to get additional business and income off your business, you've got to have new business. And that's just where we're at as a city.
Mr. Ruth?
Well, I'm a little different on this. I think the concept of economic development is somewhat overplayed. I mean, these retail companies, they know more about our demographics than we know about our demographics. I mean, Whataburger didn't come to Middle Tennessee until they could build several stores in profitable areas and make some money. I mean, that's what businesses are all about. Now, recruiting industry is a completely different ballgame. I mean, recruiting good, high-paying jobs, and that's got to be the solution to the people who need lower income housing, as it was called. I mean, I'd rather get them jobs that enable them to afford something even better than what a low income house would be. Industrial recruiting that money is well spent. Although I'm concerned often that we get too excited about getting them here, that we give away too much. I mean, for example, when I was on the council in the late 90s, we had to upgrade our ladder truck for the fire department at the cost of $350,000 on a $12 million budget. That's a lot of money. For 3 buildings in town, we needed that ladder truck for 3 buildings in town. Christian Towers, the hospital, and the Gap. And none of those people were paying property taxes. Now, the nonprofits, I understand, but we rebated Gap their property taxes the first 10 years they were here. They contributed nothing to help us purchase that ladder truck.
So how do you balance between the fact that they're coming in and creating jobs and putting back money in the community versus offering them economic incentives? Are you saying it's out of balance?
Well, I mean, it taxes the rest of us in a way. I mean, because services that money that was rebated to them would have been used to pay for have to be, gotten from somewhere else. So those things, I really would like to see those carefully managed. I mean, we won the contest, 4 years ago about being the friendliest place? Do we play that enough? I mean, do we sit in these meetings and say, this is what we got to offer you. We got a good workforce. We're a friendly place to live. We got reasonable housing opportunities available. Oh, no, it's like, well, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, we'll give you that, we'll give you that. I mean, sometimes. And that.
Mr. Fann, do you agree we need to scale back economic incentives for businesses?
Well, what I know about the Gap is they created several jobs. When they came to town, I lost 4 employees overnight, but they created a better job than I could offer them. And I feel like the Gap's been a good thing for a long time.
All right. Mr. Ruth, question for you. In your questionnaire, you said, quote, I want to see all areas of our city treated equally. Why do some neighborhoods have nice curbs and underground drainage pipes while others have ditches that collect trash and are difficult to mow? So my question is, do you think that's happening, and why would that be happening? And then how do we fix it?
Well, I mean, it is happening. Drive down Lock 4 Road, for example. The people have drainage ditches. Drive down Driver's Lane, which is a road that I use to get to my house from that end of town on Timberwood Drive. I mean, they've got drainage ditches in front of the house, and when they complain about it, the city sends somebody out there to dig them a little deeper. And that's the solution. Well, why not nice smooth pipe so they can mow it to the curb, which is their responsibility, something a little bit easier to do. Those drainage ditches just collect trash. They're hard to mow. They have to be usually weed eated. And it just makes a nicer appearance. And plus the fact, me being in a service vehicle, a lot of times I back into the driveway to get to the house. And sometimes that driveway where where you're going over the ditch where the pipe is kind of narrow, and I'm very careful about it, but it's just something, it's just a factor we've not, I guess, considered when we let them live with the ditches like we do.
Mr. Fann?
Well, the reason you have some that have and some that have not, in my opinion, is the newer development, the restrictions require the contractor a lot of times to take care of that problem in advance. The older ones, 40 years ago, you didn't have those restrictions in Gallatin. That's the reason you've got the drainage ditches he's talking about.
All right. We talked earlier about amenities, and amenities are part of what makes a city, or can make a city, a great place to live, from our parks and outdoors to places to shop and eat, to cultural activities. Do you think Gallatin has the amenities to make this a great city? And if not, what are some other amenities that we need here? And what would you try to achieve as elected representative to try to get some of those to come here? Mr. Fann?
I think we have good amenities. I think there's room for improvement. The present city council discusses this on a regular basis. I think you're going to see it get even better in the future, and I think you're going to see more funds appropriated for it. But, you know, you can't do it all at once. And there's only so much money coming into this community, and you can't spend it all on one certain thing. But it's grown, it's getting better, and it's going to get even better.
Mr. Ruth?
Now, if I could clarify something, in amenities, are you including retail places?
Sure.
and
Places
restaurants
to
and
shop,
stuff?
places to
Well,
eat, everything.
As I said earlier, those places are not going to, they don't come here just because an economic development guy took them out to dinner and said, we'd love to have you here. I mean, they come here because they know the demographics are right for what they provide. Recruiting recruiting retail is like recruiting in the wind. I mean, it's going to happen if the demographics are right. And so spending money on that aspect of it, I mean, to me is not that essential. Now, as amenities as far as parks concerned, you know, we bought the Triple Creek Parkland again back when I was on the council. And the thing that frustrated me about that is I made a proposal that we get an appraisal for that property before we bought it. I made a motion for that in the council meeting. And that motion did not even get a second. We paid $2.3 million for 200 acres back then and didn't even know if that was the right price or not because we wouldn't get an appraisal. That's where I'd like to see us be a little bit better so we can make our money go farther. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Ruth, do you support term limits for
Absolutely.
council members? And
Absolutely.
how long should the term be? How long?
Absolutely, at every level. The statement was made earlier about what institutional
Knowledge.
I don't think that's a term that our founding fathers ever used. I mean, they intended for this to be a system that put citizens in the place of making decisions for citizens. And having come from real life, there can't be any better institutional knowledge than that experience right there, because they know what it's like. My wife and I run our cleaning business, and we have, it's just her and I. And the things that we're required to do by the government at the federal level and the state level, and a little bit on the city, not so much, but it's amazing what we have to comply with just being a two-person operation. We got 28 employee rights posters on the wall that if I was missing one of them, we'd be in trouble for. And so lightening the burden on businesses from that standpoint would be helpful in attracting them and making them more profitable to pay their people better. Thank you. Sorry.
So, and how many terms do you think? Council? Two terms.
Two anyway.
Ms. Fann, what do you think about that?
Well, the
Term limits, yes, sir.
on the state and federal level, yeah, I'm for it. I'm not sure what the number should be. Personally, I think 12 years. President, I like how it is now. On the local level, I was for it until I became a councilman. But what I found out being a councilman is a first-time councilman. There's a lot of history that these present council members had that knew why things were done that I didn't know. They've got a 3-term limit now. I would probably make it 4.
4 terms, okay. And last question, and Ms. Fann, start with you. What is the single most important issue facing the city right now? And what do you think we need to do about whatever that issue is?
Well, that depends on who you talk to.
I'm talking to you.
Okay. Well, if we're having a supposedly recession headed this way, it's going to be budget management, and we need to make sure that we keep our budget in order. And I think the present council has done a good job. The previous council did. Our mayor has done a good job. The previous mayor did a good job of that. If you look at the history, you'll see that. It's easy to condemn and say what people can or can't do or haven't done, but you're not in that seat. I've learned a lot the last 3.5 years that I thought I might be able to do, or had a suggestion that the state level will not let you do it. So the most pressing issue that I hear is from the citizens is they talk about traffic. With growth, you're going to have traffic. sometimes I feel like I'm feeling selfish myself when I get frustrated with the traffic. But if you'll stop and think, what's 10 minutes for the benefits of the growth? I'm willing to give up at 10 minutes on a trip.
For the benefit of the what?
Mr. Ruth, what's the
For the benefit of the what? I missed that last.
of growth,
Oh,
of,
growth,
of,
okay.
of the growth? What's in your mind the single most important issue facing the city right now?
Well, it's been touched on earlier, and this was, has been expressed to me from some constituents, is managing the growth in such a way that it doesn't adversely affect anybody else's property values. I mean, we've got a prevalent attitude throughout pretty much all of Tennessee that, by golly, it's my property, I get to do what I want with it. Well, so does your neighbor. You know, your neighbor has as much right to keep the value of their property high. And we all know what we wouldn't want to live next to. You know, out there at Clear Lake Meadows and 109, there's a hamburger stand and a coffee shop right next door to a house and across the street from 3. And I was out there talking to them the other day, and I asked, how you feel about that? Well, we're not happy about it at all, but they don't feel like they can do anything about it. How did that happen? How did we end up with hamburger stands going to be open until 10 o'clock on Friday night, 9 o'clock every other night, with their speaker on the side of the place aiming across the street? I don't think anybody in here would choose to live in something like that. So those kinds of things we need to pay a little more attention to protecting everybody's property rights equally.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both very much for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So I have some breaking news to share. We're going to accomplish something that rarely happens in government. We're going to finish this thing ahead of time. So that way we can get ahead of the traffic. Up next will be the candidates for mayor. We have Mayor Paige Brown. Mr. Brad Jolly was also invited to this event, but my understanding he's out of town and couldn't attend. Sends his regards. So welcome the mayor to the stage.
Mayor, welcome.
Sit on my feet.
What's that?
I'm sunk down in here.
Would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you, too, for the Chamber and Main Street Media for perpetuating this candidate forum that happens when there is an election. I think it's very valuable for all of us. I'm Paige Brown. I'm currently the mayor of Gallatin. My short story is usually that I grew up here, couldn't wait to leave, and now I'm the mayor. But the extended version of that is that I did grow up here. There wasn't much opportunity. I graduated high school early. I went to college, and I worked in 3 different, being the mayor is my actual third career. But I worked out of state, and my first career, which was television, actually brought me back to Tennessee, to the Nashville area. And so I kind of went from Nashville to Hendersonville, to in between Hendersonville and Gallatin, back to my hometown. In fact, I think the first house that I bought in Gallatin was probably 1.5 miles from the house I grew up in. And so I've always loved my community, I think because it was my roots, but being back in the community and then working in the community in my second career, which was nonprofit management, gave me a true love for the people, for the heritage, for all of the things that were so good about Gallatin and the value of having a community with the culture that we do. So I, as you know, ran for office in 2014, began serving in 2015. I believe that I have great knowledge at this point in my career, certainly the experience that only someone who has served in this role could have. And I've built great relationships, both with the people in this community, fellow elected leaders, other mayors, and the commissioners and state elected officials. And I think that helps us so much as a community to have good, strong relationships. I try to do everything the way I try to do everything the way that I think it should be done, and I always try to do what I do with grace and with kindness. So I would appreciate your support in the November election. And again, thank you all so much.
All right. Mayor Brown, thank you. I hope Nick didn't speak too soon. I don't know that he knew I was going to be grilling Mayor Brown for 2.5 hours up here. So kidding.
It's too cold in this room for that.
I'm kidding. All right. Well, let's talk about traffic.
Absolutely.
All right. Many people associate increased traffic with growth. You know, you have said we quoted you in our newspaper that traffic congestion is one of your top priorities this year in this election. But I look back at stories we've written over the past several years, and traffic has been an issue, and many would argue it's getting worse. So, is it possible, with where we are now, to relieve traffic congestion? And if so, when can we expect things to finally get better?
Okay, I'll begin by saying that I had this revelation in recent weeks as I was thinking about that challenge. Traffic is a bit of the trade-off for living in a low-tax state. Because we don't build roads before they're needed, we're always chasing the traffic and the congestion. I grew up here. I can remember it taking forever to get down Gallatin Road to Nashville. I can remember it when they were building 65. I can remember it when they were building 386. I can remember when they were expanding 65. So it is a perpetual problem. I do think in Gallatin we are going to see a market improvement because finally, our intelligent traffic system will be installed. I feel ridiculous saying that because I have been saying it for years, but we are ready to go into construction and we are only just now waiting on the fiber, which has been delayed by the disruption in the supply chain. So engineers say that installing those coordinated signals is going to make a tremendous difference in our traffic flow. And we continue to improve intersections. We've gotten in the governor's budget for widening the 386 part and doing that interchange improvement going on to 109. So that will help us tremendously as well.
So when is the synchronization of the lights supposed to be completed by?
The fiber is projected to be here at the first of the year, and we should be able to begin construction right after that. And construction should take about 6 months.
6 months. Okay, great. Let me get your reaction to something your opponent said. He said that he does not believe city employees are being paid enough, and he cited pay studies to bolster his case. Is he right? Are city employees today being paid enough? And if not, what do you propose the city do about that?
Well, I'm very proud that we did just complete and institute the results of a pay study, and we have not contributed, that's not the right word. We have budgeted almost an additional $2 million towards our employee base. And of course, we have about 400 full-time employees. And so what has happened, because of how government's structured and using not what I was used to in the corporate world at all, where you're based on merit, but using the system that they use in government, it's very challenging to look across the board and figure out where your employees should be pay range based on their tenure and based on their experience and based on their position. So you do pay studies periodically. One was done right before I was elected. That was actually the results of that were actually used for the coming budget year, and we put those into place during my first year. The next one should have been done about 2020. Well, COVID happened, and that was not the time to be doing a pay study because we didn't know how things were going to be disrupted. So shortly thereafter, not thereafter, because we're actually still in COVID, but we then, once we felt like things were settled, we did institute a pay study. We got the results from that. We were behind, particularly in the low wage jobs, because as you know, there's so much demand in those areas. And so that was where the largest pressure we were having is. So I feel like our employees, no employee is ever going to be making as much as I think they're worth. But you have to use the comparative data. You have to be respectful of the taxpayer investment in our city, and you have to set that pay by some comparison, and that's what we use. And so we just had this, and we should be in a very good place right now.
So you think, as far as where it is now, there could be step increases that you'll put in the budget, but there's not going to be another big increase like what you all went through this year?
Again, you do pay studies periodically to make sure you're where you should be. It's going to be interesting because we know that there's tremendous pressure because we don't have existing workforce. So when we don't have existing workforce, wages are going to go up. So in a few years, we'll be faced with doing a pay study again. I'm actually a proponent of merit pay, and we actually have some departments who would like to try that as a pilot program because I do believe it can work in government. But I forgot what I was going to say. About the pay study and it being fairly paid. I think people don't realize that the City of Gallatin has phenomenal benefits. Our employees have full insurance coverage for dental, vision, and health. We have a robust 401k or hybrid program with the state. If you're in the 401k program, we actually match 9%. We do 5%, whether or not the employee contributes or not. And then we get every federal holiday at this point. We also have a sick leave bank that employees can utilize, lots of wellness options, employee assistance programs, really strong benefits. To me, compared to the private sector, I was very, very impressed.
I think you're going to be recruiting some employees in the audience with that kind of benefits package right now.
We have
listening to that.
jobs open.
I want to get your reaction to some things that were talked about tonight by the candidates for council. And one is in the District 5, there was some discussion about low-income housing. What can we do there? What can we do? They both said it's a critical issue in that district. What do you think?
It is a critical issue. And before the forum began tonight, I said, but when they say you've got to stop the growth, I said, but where are your employees going to live? Because affordable housing or attainable housing, we're not even using the word affordable anymore. We're using attainable because that's for someone with a fairly good wage able to purchase a home. And it's economics, it's supply and demand. And when the supply isn't there, then the prices go up. And we are in such an unusual time because Tennessee is so attractive, as are a few other states, and people from other more broken states are fleeing here. I call it the kind of mass migration. Well, those people are coming here. They're not participating in the workforce because they have hefty pensions or they're early retirees, and they're paying cash for homes. So that competition to obtain a house is very, very challenging. I'm very grateful for nonprofit programs like Habitat for Humanity. Of course, Gallatin does have it's Gallatin Housing Authority, which looks for affordable housing solutions, but there's a long wait list on that. And other nonprofits are examining paths to affordable homes. We actually, twice in the last week, I've had conversations with private investors who are interested in finding, one of them had the idea for like a transition from homelessness to house. The other had an idea for people who were coming out of halfway homes for drug addiction before they go to fully independent living. And so we talked about, could you make it work as a private investment? And so I think it's going to be a combination of all those tools to find those solutions where people actually have housing that isn't a tremendous burden.
Is there a role for the city to play there to invest in that, to help provide incentives for those developers to build those houses?
Well, a very small, for instance, we did provide some funds for Habitat for Humanity to do housing repair programs. I don't know that, the federal government offers programs, and then we have our Gallatin Housing Authority, which runs itself and makes the money to be able to invest in future housing. It is a supply and demand. It is investors with heart. It is new concepts, all of those things. But I'm not sure it's the government's role to figure out not figure out. I'll help figure out all day long, but to put taxpayer monies in that.
Okay, great. Another issue that came up tonight was one of the candidates raised the issue of impact fees.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that. Do you think we need to be charging builders and developers more to build homes?
I'm very open to impact fees, but the challenge, as we have explored time and time again, is that Williamson County was allowed impact fees. They were sued by the Home Builders Association. The case was settled, but now it's being appealed. And so the state legislators, and I've had conversations with many beyond our elected officials. And so what I have been told by the numerous people we've had conversations with about at the elected leadership at the state is that until that litigation is done, they wouldn't even consider it. Now, there is some stopgaps there that we can do to make a difference. We have the adequate facilities tax at the county level. I'm not really certain if there's a cap on what that amount can be, but it's been the same for a lot of years. And to me, it seems like that can be increased. We in the City of Gallatin years ago, and I think someone mentioned this earlier, years ago, we covered the cost of development because we were so desperate for investment in our city. We do not cover any costs for development anymore. We charge high fees. We demand lots of improvements in infrastructure. We've even started demanding off-site road improvements, which is new. And so we're trying to get as much as we can from our investors. Sometimes it's even, what are you willing to do for the city to improve it beyond what you're required to here? And many are willing to do that.
There was another discussion about economic development incentives for businesses coming in, and it was suggested that maybe we're giving too much to businesses when they're coming Do you disagree with that or agree with that? Do you think
Well-
we need to watch that?
Well, in my prior career, I was really incensed by incentives for economic development. But then what I came to see is that was how it was done. And so when you're competing with other states where economic incentives are frequent and very, very generous, Tennessee kind of had to step up and do some of the same. I heard the Economic Development Commissioner within the last year say Tennessee is a desirable enough state now that we don't have to play that game so much. But I will take just Meta, for instance, because I think that's an interesting case study. And you should know this too about economic incentives. When we do those through our Industrial Development Board, those are examined by a third party and also by the state comptroller. And Meta, as our for instance here, actually generates $3 for every dollar in abatement. You know, when Meta comes online with their second building, it will be the largest single revenue stream in the county. I think one of the things that Gallatin kind of gets that people get wrong about Gallatin is they say that we're a drain on the county. We are actually an economic powerhouse for the county. And I hate that that narrative gets spread about a lot because that's not the case at all.
Gotcha. What about amenities? We talked tonight about, and everyone pretty much said we have great amenities here, great places to eat, shop at parks and all that. But what are some things you'd like to see and that you may propose over the next 4 years of ways to improve that?
More places to buy shoes, please. No. I'm glad I made people laugh. I do think we have good amenities. I always think we can do better in everything that we do. So when you talk about on the public amenity side, you know, Gallatin has 3 properties that they purchased that they've not yet developed into parkland. So I look forward to the day that we can invest in those and do that. They talked about improvements in Clearview Park. I want to see improvements in Thompson Park. I want to see improvements in all of our public amenities. And I think Gallatin has the opportunity, and I believe we can be like the best park system in the state of Tennessee, and find a path to that isn't a tremendous burden on taxpayers. I am very, very proud of the Miracle Park. That was a huge investment. It's the largest and best in the state of Tennessee, and it's a great opportunity for children and adults of all abilities to play together in a unique environment. That has become a tourism driver, by the way. Okay, now I'll talk about public amenities because seriously, I do want places to buy shoes and to buy more things. But someone earlier made the point that you can attract all you want to. You can try and tell people about your city. You can go to every International Council of Shopping Centers meeting there is. But until you have the numbers, meaning your population, you have the density, and you have the demographics associated with whatever business that is, they're not going to come to your community. I think one of Gallatin's greatest strengths is that we have so many fabulous independent businesses. Somebody talked about the small businesses earlier this evening, and small businesses account for about 50% of all employees in the United States. Having independent businesses in our community, I always say they are the texture and the character and the essence of our city. And so when we talk about these things that we want nationally, we really have to cherish, appreciate, and value those small businesses that are, I think, the heart of our city.
All right, let me close here with this question. You've been mayor for the last 8 years. What is and you only can say one thing, the one single thing you're proudest of, and what is the one thing, either your biggest regret or the one thing we haven't gotten done here that you wish you could change?
There's so many.
You meant on the good thing when you say so many, right?
Oh yeah, okay. The Miracle Park. I mean, that's one single amenity that, I mean, I don't get the credit for it. I always say my job is to take the blame and give everyone else the credit. But I think our city can be very, very proud of that investment. One thing I always say I regret, and this is not meant as an affront against any industry, but I don't like the digital billboards that were approved. I do regret that we haven't moved along on some of the projects that we should have moved along on, but I think it's because we have so much private development pressure that our employees and our city staff just cannot dedicate the time that they need to get those projects through the process and to realization.
Okay, great. Mayor Brown, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, let's give a round of applause for all of our candidates tonight. Takes a lot of time and energy and courage and effort to put yourself out there as a candidate and serve an elected office. So don't forget that when you hear these people speak and they're putting themselves out there and putting their families out there and sacrificing their time and energy and resources to make your community better. So that applies to all of them. So we appreciate you all for stepping forward and trying to serve your community. Let's also give a round of applause to the chamber for putting this event on tonight, as well as our great Vol State AV staff that made all this possible. Give a round of applause to our Vol State AV staff. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And thank you to everyone watching on Facebook. One last thing. Number one, don't forget to register to vote. If you're going to complain, you need to vote. And you have to be registered to vote. Number two, make sure you go vote. So with that being said, remember that early voting starts October 19th and runs through November the 3rd. You can early vote for the Gallatin city election at Hartsville Pike, Church of Christ in Gallatin. Election day is November the 8th. If you need more information about your polling locations or how to register to vote, you can visit votesumnertn.org. With that said, good night, safe travels, and get ahead of that traffic.